Thanks for stopping in. My name's Guy. Today I'm going to start building this curved front end table. It's all cherry construction. There'll be curved front doors that are going to be veneered. It's a fairly challenging project, so stick around and I'll show you how I made the carcass for this. I'm going to get started by cutting down the stock for the legs themselves. This is a piece of 8/4 cherry. It's about 65 inches long. You need to get 4 legs that are 25 inches or so in height. And typically I cut along the edges to get rift grain stock so I can get straight grain all the way up and down all 4 sides of the leg. I'm not going to be able to do it on this, mainly because there's this big divot here and there's also some sapwood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one here. These will be the front legs and this will be the back legs. And I'm going to roughly cut these out to 1 3/4. The final dimensions are going to be 1.5 by 1.5. This is a piece of material I have milled up to create the bottom of the piece and the top of the piece, actually the top and bottom rail. And it does need to have a curve in it. Now this is the template that I used to make the bending form for the doors. I'll show you that later. But I know the distance between the legs is going to be 19 inches. I'm going to have 3/4 inch tenons on either side. So I need to make 2 pieces 20.5 inches out of this. And I'm just going to cut those over at my miter saw. Well, while that part on the jig dries, I need to mark the center line on these. Now I know these are 20.5, so that is going to be 10.25. Just going to make a mark there at 10.25 and carry that line all the way through. Now that I've got these little toggle clamps in place, again I'll take the center line of the board and I've carried up the center line of the jig onto this. I just need to line that up, clamp it down, and then from underneath I'm going to mark out the radius of that curve. Then I'm just going to go over the bandsaw, cut off the excess, staying about maybe a 32nd inch away from that line, and then I'll pattern route these. Okay, so I'm over here at my router table and I've got a pattern routing bit. I've got it set the right amount. I've got a start and stop pin, and this is the jig again, and I'm just going to take this, just so you know what these little ears are for. That's where the actual tenon material is going to get cut out. I want to make sure I don't round into that because I need to go straight there. So anyways, I'm just going to line up my center line, clamp it down, and then just route it out with the pattern bit. Well, that's the profile I'm looking for, and I still have the little ears here left to do the tenons. Now I just got to do the other one and then we'll move on from there. I've got the 4 legs grouped together and I've played with them a little bit to make sure I get the best grain match on the front, the sides, nice straight grain all the way around. I put a carpenter's triangle. This is obviously the front, this is the back. These lines right here represent where the mortises are going to go, and I'm going to start to lay out for those now. So here's how the front of the cabinet is going to lay out. Again, there's going to be double tenons on the bottom here. This is going to be a dovetail that goes into the top. So I've got the top and the bottom of the mortises marked out, and I'll just put a little pencil line there so maybe you can see it a little bit easier. I doubt if you can see it at all. They're very light. So there's going to be a 3/8 inch mortise here and a 3/8 inch mortise here. And all I really need is the top and bottom of this and the starting point on that side. And I'm just going to go over to the mortising machine with a 3/4 inch hollow chisel mortise and cut that out. I've got my hollow chisel mortiser set up with a 3/8 inch bit. It's a 1/4 inch. This side here is a 1/4 inch away from the fence. I've got it all set up and all the adjustments made. All I really need to do is cut this. Again, I'm going to put a mortise here and flip the board around and then go in from the other side and create another mortise. So I've got my mortise here and I've got one of the pieces. It's going to be one of the cross members. So I'm just going to put this in here and then I'm going to mark those with my marking knife. I'm just going to put a dimple right where those are. Now I've got those little dimples marked, I just need to put my marking knife into them. And just bring the line down. Now that I've got that marked, this needs to go away, this piece in the middle here needs to go away, and this piece here on the end goes away. Now that I've got the areas marked that I want to cut out, I'm just going to go over the bandsaw and I'm going to cut those out. I'm going to leave the line a little bit and I'll just clean those up with the chisel when I'm done. Well, after about a half hour or so of fiddling with those joints, this is dry fit together and it's really, really nice and square. This is the next piece that I have to fit in there. And notice this line here. This is the line that I use to reference off that jig. Now I always want to make sure that that line is always facing up, because if there's any inconsistencies in the curve of that jig, these two have to be completely coplanar. So the next step is to take this piece and I need to cut a half blind dovetail in the top here and then a dovetail here. But first I need to transfer the measurements in between these joints. That's more important than anything else, that this center line lines up and that the distance between these two is exactly the same. That'll keep this piece nice and square. I've got this all cleaned out and the router got away from me just a little bit right here. No big deal because you will never see it because the tabletop will be covering up. But it is a nice snug fit and it's perfectly flush and it's square. So I just need to do the other side and we're done with this part. With these four pieces of material, these are stretchers that are going to connect the front legs to the back legs. These are 1.5 inches wide, 12.5 inches long. So let me get rid of a few of these pieces here. I'll show you what I've got going on. Now this is face down on the table, so I'm just going to open this up. These are the mortises I cut before. If I open it up again, you can see where I've laid out for the mortises on here. There's two at the top and two at the bottom. The design on this is a little bit different. I want to keep these stretchers flush with the face of the leg. This has to be pretty accurate work, but I want a nice clean look to it. So these mortises are 1.1 inches long, 3/8 wide, and they're going to be 3/4 inch deep. So I'm going to go over the mortising machine, set that up, and get these cut. These mortises are for the structures that will hold the two sides together in the back of the piece. Well, here's the first dry fit of the piece. I've got the back slats in, the sides and the front. I will also have these in here. I want to make sure that this center opening is perfectly square for those curved panels. The next thing I need to work on is the actual panels for the sides. And I need to put grooves all the way around for panels that are going to fit in here. And I'm basically going to start that by marking all the pieces that get grooves. I'm going to mark where they start, they stop, then I'm going to go over the router table and I'm going to cut those out. I've got this real nice piece of cherry. It's got a real nice cathedral going up the middle. This is thickness planed and flattened to about 3/4 of an inch, almost 7/8, but not quite. I'm going to resaw this down the middle, and I'm hoping for anywhere between 5/16 and 3/8 of an inch thickness. So I'll go over the bandsaw and resaw this now. Well, here's the resawn board. I was able to get it down to 5/16 of an inch. That's okay. We go like this with it. Or like this with it. Or like this with it. I think I'm going to go with that. So this will be one side and then this will be the other side. I just need to rip this down, joint this edge, cut it in half, and then glue these together. Now that I know the thickness of my side panels, which is 5/16 of an inch, I've got my router bit set up in my router table, and I just need to make a couple passes and get all those grooves cut. I'm getting ready to cut the grooves in the legs for the side panels, and I need to drop the bit into this mortise here, run it down here, and then come out the other side on this mortise here. I've got my fence set up where the starting and stop points are for the bit, so I can just drop it down and I'll pretty much know when I come out the other side. I've got the two side panels dry fit together, and here's the panel that I need to cut up to put in there. I want to maintain that seam or the symmetry between the pattern of the book matching even on both sides. So from here to here I'm 11 and 7/16, and from here to here I'm 17 and 3/4. I need to cut this an eighth of an inch less than those measurements to give myself a little bit of wiggle room for the panel to expand and contract. But I'm ready to cut this and get those in there now. Well, after I got the panels cut to size, I put them in the case and dry fit it all together. Came out really nice and square. I'm very happy about that. Next time I'm going to start working on the curved front doors. They're going to be multiple ply, vacuum pressed over form with the cherry veneer. Should be a pretty good challenge for me, but I have to get those done before I start working on the rest of the internals. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, please do. It means a lot to me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.